Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat. And let me tell you, Horwat, I'm feeling pretty good right now about my Edmonton Oilers. Zach Hyman with the OT heroics knotted up at 3 games to go, and my Oilers have home ice advantage once again. How you feeling about your LA Kings right about now?
The great thing is like, yeah, I'm rooting for a team, but I don't care. I'm going to root for a team, but you know what? If they lose, no skin off my nose. I don't know. You're right. I think it's going to be a great series, first of all, but man, the Oilers just didn't seem to. You have to be real. There were times it didn't seem like the Oilers had it.
Oh, no, there have been many times in this series where I've been worried about our little in-show bet here, but right now I'm flying high off an overtime win. It's the highs and lows of the playoffs, and even though the Penguins aren't in it, we're not covering a team that is actively playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Gonna get those highs and lows somewhere, right?
Yeah, you're right. And I will say this too. That was absolutely a high stick on Gabe Vilardi, but for the sake of the Oilers, score a goal in the third period, and that never happens. So,
Yeah, exactly.
You have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Stop looking for excuses as an unintentional high stick. That in any heat of the moment game, even in the regular season, a ref is going to miss that. And even seeing it fall and hit Ekholm, yeah, I know that's not part of the rule, but again, heat of the moment, you kind of forget that's part of the rule, and you go, okay, he hit it next, doesn't matter, we move on. Also, stop playing, or don't stop playing. Keep playing until the whistle, and maybe you get possession. Anyway, I digress. Penguins hockey that doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, we have plenty to talk about surrounding the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're going to do our 3 M's segment here. We're going to actually do it in 2 parts. We'll do the first 5 restricted and unrestricted free agents for the Pittsburgh Penguins in this segment, the second 5 in the next one, and then we'll finish off the show with our weekly Pens pull. But I want to start here, Horwat, considering we haven't done it yet. The 2022-23 Iron Penguin Award winners. We forgot to award it after the season. We have 4 winners this year, Horwat, the most we have ever had among the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is, I believe, let me double check really quickly. This could be the 4th year that we're awarding this. It is. It is the 4th year we're awarding it. We have 4 award winners, so a great little tie-in right there. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Rickard Rakell, and Brian Dumoulin. All 82 games for those 4 Pittsburgh Penguins, all first-time recipients of the Iron Penguin Award.
Yeah, I mean, like it or not with Brian Dumoulin, I mean, the fact that he stayed healthy all year he deserves a little pat on the back for that, right? I mean, sure, the first half wasn't great, and sure, he found a different form of game in the second, but good on him. It's hard to play all 82 in a season. Rickard Rakell needs no introduction. We're glad he was able to play all 82, and I mean, for the Crosby and Malkin, we can lump these two together. I think Crosby said it best. He'd take 81 in a playoff spot, and he's totally right still. It's cool that they were able to do this, but goes to show and it's cool they were able to do it and have this great of a season for both of them. Just goes to show what kind of downfall this bottom 6 brought to this team.
Yeah, think about the fact that considering the history of the Pittsburgh Penguins when it comes to staying healthy, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Rickard Rakell all played 82 games. I believe Jake Gensel played 78 games. Brian Rust played, I believe, 78 or 79 games, and Jason Zucker played 78 games as well. So their top 6 missed very little time this season, yet they still weren't able to get the job done. But congratulations to the 4 of them. As you've mentioned before, Crosby and Malkin, the first time they've ever played 82 games in a season together. And this is the 4th year that we've done this. Still, even though we had 4 first-time winners this year, no 2-time winners. So they're all tied for the lead in lifetime Iron Penguin Award wins.
That's quite fun. That's quite interesting. One thing I know we discussed ad nauseum how injured the Penguins were this year. We were the 5th. We had the 5th least man games lost in the NHL this year. Didn't realize that. So the injuries can't be an excuse this year. Not that we were really using excuses this year, but
no, they just simply weren't good enough. I think that's pretty much all there is to it.
Yeah, and I just think that the fact that 4 players here played in all 82, that's rare even on healthy teams, I think. So good on them. And you're right. Brian Rust played 81. I mean, you only miss one game. There's something. Jeff Carter, again, like Dumoulin, as much as you didn't want to see him in the lineup, Jeff Carter played 79. Gensel 78, Jason Zucker 78. So everyone was around for a lot of the season. When they were here, they were in the lineup. And when you're not losing out on players lost, you have to have a better turnout. Straight up. But
with that, let's move over to our 3M segment. It's a segment we do multiple times a year. We're going to do it here today. We might do it again closer to the beginning of free agency. Of course, some of these players might be signed by then, but let's start off with Drew O'Connor. Must sign, maybe sign or move on. Reminder, Drew O'Connor is a restricted free agent, so the Penguins hold his rights this summer.
We'll hold his rights. I will re-sign him, and that's a must. Just, you're going to be able to get him cheap. I don't know what kind of cheap exactly. I don't think I would be. Man, yeah, he goes to what, $1 million at max, depending on how much term he gets, depending on what we genuinely do think of him as an NHL player. The real question, I think, to this deal is not so much the money or the term, but is it going to be a one-way? Is that going to be, you are going to be a full-time NHLer now? Here's what you get. Also, before we even really step into this fully, new ownership's going to throw a bit of a wrench into a lot of these. Not a huge one, but it is a new ownership group, or new management group of, well, what do you have? We need to now assess who you are as a player. Yeah, we've been watching the game tape. We can see the numbers, this, that, and the other. Hear from scouts, hear from other front office execs, but it is ultimately their decision, and they have to run their own diagnosis. So, I mean, I still do think they'll keep Drew O'Connor around. I think the real question, though, isn't, like I said, it's not going to be the term, it's not going to be the price tag, it's going to be the one-way or two-way deal.
Yeah, I'll echo that sentiment. I think that's going to be the biggest question surrounding this contract, because it's not going to cost a lot of money. It's not going to be a heavy cap hit. You know they want to bring him back because he plays the game the exact way that Mike Sullivan wants his team to play the game. And he's capable of doing it to the level that we saw in 2016 and 2017 among depth forward. He's like a Tom Kuhnhackl right now. I mean, to make that comparison, he's pretty much a Tom Kuhnhackl. He's 24 years old. He plays aggressive and fast. The Penguins need more of that, not less. So I think this is a pretty easy answer, no matter who's sitting in the big chair for the Pittsburgh Penguins. You bring back Drew O'Connor, not just because it's going to be cheap, not just because he's young, he's fast, he's great on the forecheck, he can kill penalties, but he's an RFA, and he's a player that just played his first real full season in the NHL. And it's not like he's going to come up and score 15 goals and he's going to cost a little bit more money than you're going to want to pay him. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be a top six guy, but I do feel like there's a little more to his offensive game that we haven't seen yet. I think you'll see that maybe another level up, maybe 10, 15 at max would probably be his ceiling. And that would be a phenomenal season from Drew O'Connor. A good season is probably 10 goals. And then, like we said, playing the way that we've mentioned all along, the penalty kill, huge. Eating up minutes on the fourth line, huge. Being able to move up to the third line if there's injuries, huge as well. So both of us are on the same wavelength with Drew O'Connor and a must sign. Let's move over to another restricted free agent in Alex Nylander. He was the Pittsburgh Penguins fans' darling at the end of the season because he was one of the first young players to break through and actually get into the top six, not just on the bottom six for a couple of games, but get some top six action with the Pittsburgh Penguins this year. What are you doing with Alex Nylander?
So I'm re-signing Nylander, but I'm not making it longer than a year. I'm making it a one-way as well, but also genuinely using his top 6 time sparingly. I think I had this discussion with you and Dougie. Were we all kind of blinded by 50 points in the AHL and seeing no other better option than just going Alex Nylander, top 6 right now? Because I felt like once he got in, he had a couple good shifts. With Malkin and Zucker, we all just kind of jumped to the conclusion of he's a top 6 player. Screw it. We need anything we can get. I think the premise of anyone in the bottom 6 can be beneficial, and that definitely helped in Nylander's favor. But putting him on the second line, I don't think helped him at all. I think Nylander can still find some legs, but it's going to be in a bottom 6 role. And it's just, I feel like it kind of has to be to really drive home because we still genuinely don't know what kind of player he is specifically. He spent a lot. I mean, he's 25 right now. I believe he'll be 26 soon enough, which means he'll be 26 in March. Okay, so he's 25. He'll be turning 26 in the middle of next season. He's pretty much hitting what should be his prime. Now, we're not expecting him to turn into his brother or anything here.
No.
But we understand that there's a little more to give probably, but how much more is it? What kind of player is he specifically? Starting him on the third line, I don't think is a terrible idea, especially if you're able to rebuild it properly. So I'm re-signing him, but not for long.
So is that a maybe sign or a must sign?
That's a must. It's definitely a must. He's still a useful player.
Okay, I go maybe sign with this. Similar to Drew O'Connor, I don't think he's going to be expensive. And I also don't give him a one-way contract because I don't think he's earned a one-way contract. You need guys that are going to be able to play at the NHL level, be those injury replacements, but also that can be at the AHL level as well and still be a productive player down there. I mean, I'm not worried about how good or bad the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton Penguins are, but I'm not willing to give Alex Nylander a one-way deal when he hasn't really shown much at the NHL level with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, he just got to the NHL level after a year and a half in the system this season. He didn't even play a dozen games for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He only scored 1 goal. I do like what he brings, and I like him more than, say, a Danton Heinen, who we'll talk about in a couple minutes, because I think he's a similar player. The only difference is when Nylander isn't scoring, he's a better facilitator than Heinen. Yeah. And I think he plays the game with a little bit more speed and a little bit more pace than Danton Heinen does. So I would bring him back over Heinen. And considering he's an RFA, I say maybe you sign him, depending on what the qualifying offer is. I haven't looked into that just yet. But I think maybe you bring him back, but I wouldn't give him a one-way deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's also totally fair. Some of me also just feels like he's seen enough time on the interstate, has he not? For one, but also two.
If I'm the Penguins, I don't give a crap. Like, cool, you're making however many $100,000 a year. You can pay for some gas to go from the NHL to the AHL level, especially when you're getting a raise to drive to Pittsburgh from Wilkes-Barre.
That's fair, but still, it's just quite. It is just genuinely meme worthy how often he got sent back and forth on the highway. But
yeah,
also with the two-way deal, it's extremely hard to have. You're right. Like, we don't worry too much about how good or bad WBS is. It's genuinely hard to have a good NHL and AHL franchise, right? And that's just hard to do. Penguins had that for a minute, like a hot minute, but
isn't this the first year that neither the Penguins or the baby Penguins or the first year that they both missed the playoffs since like 2003?
At least in 16 years, right?
Well, yeah, I think it was 2003 or 2002. I can't remember exactly. Taylor Haas of DK Pittsburgh Sports put that out, and I just can't remember off the top of my head.
That would make sense because you have to figure that some of the players at least that pushed those early playoff teams into the playoffs were probably on Wilkes-Barre at the time. So that would make sense. That being said, though, it's hard to have two good winning teams like that. And, if Nylander needs to get sent down, called up, I think that's also perfectly okay. I don't mind a two-way. I just, one way or the other, I think you have to re-sign him either way.
Yeah, we're going to need to pick up the pace here because we are taking way too much time on Drew O'Connor and Alex Nylander. So let's move over to Danton Heinen. I'll start. I'm moving on from Danton Heinen. Year 1 was great with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Year 2 was not. 8 goals in 65 games this season, 3 of them coming in October. He does not offer much on the ice other than 5-on-5 scoring, and he didn't do much of that this season. At this point, and I'm going to say it again with another player down the line here, the Penguins need to change where they can afford to change. And getting rid of a $1 million player for a fresh new face in that role when Danton Heinen didn't bring very much, that's an area you need to change. So you just cut bait and move on from Danton Heinen if I'm making the decision.
Oh, yeah. We took a little longer on Nylander and O'Connor because quite a few of these are pretty cut and dry.
Yes.
Like this one. Danton Heinen, thanks for your service. You'll find a job somewhere else. It just won't be here. The first year was fun. It was a little unexpected. This year was also a little unexpected, but in the wrong way. So peace out.
Let's move over to Dmitry Kulikov. Again, a pretty quick and easy one here. I'm moving on from Dmitry Kulikov. I'm not even sure why he was playing in the first place when the Penguins acquired him. I understand maybe bringing him over because that's what was required in order to get Brock McGinn off the books, especially for his contract going into the next couple of seasons. So you get Kulikov on an expiring deal. Not sure why he was playing over P.O. Joseph. So I'm moving on from the aging Dmitry Kulikov that showed me very little from the trade deadline to the end of the season.
Yeah, he didn't show much. He unfortunately didn't show you much considering an injury. But I'm also shocked he agreed. I mean, unless we're just one of the teams that he didn't have on his list to get moved here in the first place. I mean, maybe he just wanted out of Anaheim. The Penguins were a possible playoff team. This, that, the other. Yeah, it's another easy cut and dry one. You're moving on, and you got out from Brock McGinn. Way to go. We did it.
Let's move over to another trade deadline acquisition. Nick Bonino will be an unrestricted free agent. He wasn't a bad option, in my opinion, at the time of the trade deadline for a depth player. He was cheap. He brought back some nostalgia, which is great for the fan base. But then he only played 3 games before lacerating his kidney and not being able to suit up again for the Pittsburgh Penguins really at all. So what are you doing with Nick Bonino? Must sign, maybe sign, or move on?
I'm moving on again. Just it was the most unfortunate of returns. Like I said, your bringing the band back together idea, that almost never works. I don't know why GM still attempt it, especially considering this is a new that was a different GM from the time. And just a very unfortunate ending. It almost never works, but the memories are fun. And 3 games later, yikes.
And even in those 3 games that he played, he really wasn't a factor. At least he blocked a shot. Unfortunately, the shot took a little bit more of a piece of him that we would have wanted. And I also think that Jeff Carter is already taking up an older center spot here on this team. Penguins don't need anybody else in that role. So I'm moving on from Nick Bonino as well. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we continue must sign, maybe sign, and move on, and talk a little bit about Brian Dumoulin, some Jason Zucker, some Josh Archibald, and another player named Tristan Jarry that a lot of people are having discourse about in Penguins fandom. We'll talk about that after the break. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm Nick Brlansky. That's Nick Horwat. We're in the midst of must sign, maybe sign, move on, looking at all of the Pittsburgh Penguins restricted and unrestricted free agents. And before we move on to talk more about the guys that played at the NHL level, there are a handful of prospects in need of a new deal. We won't go through them all. Just going to mention Valtteri Puustinen needs a new one. Ty Smith needs a new one. Philip Hollander is up and a restricted free agent. Drake Caggiula is unrestricted, and goaltender Philip Lindbergh is restricted. Just some of the bigger names of players at the AHL level who are going to need a new contract. Any of those names that you're just like, okay, we could move on from them. We don't need to see more of that in the Pittsburgh Penguins system.
Let me unmute my mic. I do not think so. I think all of them deserve at least another couple seasons at the cheap price that they are, just to finally see what they're worth. I mean, this is the season we have to give some of those names a try, a legitimate try. Ty Smith, I fully expect to be in the NHL lineup next year, first of all. So he's deserving of a contract that can keep him with the team. Everyone else, I mean, Drake Caggiula, I think maybe that's not moving the needle much, so there's that. But I don't know, most of everyone else down there, I think, can bring back for another season and see what they really have.
Yeah, I'd echo that same sentiment about Caggiula. He didn't show much when he went to the NHL level. He wasn't given much of an opportunity in those couple of games that he played. I believe he played like 6 minutes of time in each of those 2 games, and then he was sent back down. So, yeah, maybe give him another shot, see what he's like after the summer, how he comes into camp, and if he can earn a spot over somebody else. I mean, the Penguins' bottom 6 was so bad last year that if you take a step forward in the summer, you might just earn yourself a roster spot at the NHL level, depending on how the new general manager is able to build up that bottom six over the summer. But with all of these guys, again, Ty Smith and Valtteri Puustinen are the two big names. I think Hollander is right there as like a 1B name. But Philip Lindbergh is an interesting scenario where we can get into this a different day.
Yeah.
Talk about goaltenders that struggled to stay healthy. Since he came to the Pittsburgh Penguins organization, he has had a handful of injuries. I'd have to double check. I think he got healthy towards the end of the season, but he missed most of his first year with the Penguins organization in 2021-22 with an injury, and then he missed some time this season as well. So interesting names down there. I'm sure we'll talk about them throughout the summer. I'm sure most of them will find a new contract here with the Pittsburgh Penguins organization. But let's move over and talk a little bit about Brian Dumoulin, Horwat. Personally, thanks for your service, BD. Thank you for the Stanley Cup runs. Thank you for being, as both of us have mentioned, one of the best defensive defensemen in the history of the organization. Right? In its most important time, or one of its most important times, he was the defensive force that led the blue line. So thanks for your service, but I'm moving on from Brian Dumoulin.
Same. Cut and dry. Thanks for everything. Your grievance package will be in the mail, I guess. Yeah, that was a fun couple of years. You're just getting aged out. You're not the same player you used to be. We definitely don't know what kind of deal that you can strike in the NHL anymore. It's probably worth more than either of us would be willing to pay, to be quite honest. Yeah, you'll never be forgotten around here. That's for sure. You'll get the very nice tribute video next season when you come back, and that's that.
Speaking directly to Brian Dumoulin there, a lot of first person or second person, you know, it's like you sat him down and you're giving the script to the new general manager. This is what we do when we call Dumoulin and say we're not offering him a new contract. There's the script right there.
I think the writing's also been on the wall for Dumoulin all season.
Yeah.
All season, even before the year started, because his struggles stemmed last year too. It's just one of the unfortunate parts of, just hitting the end of your rope. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that he showed this season more than last year that he's just not capable of being a top pairing defenseman anymore. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the lower body injuries he's faced and the fact that he's over the age of 30, it's when it starts to happen to every NHL defenseman. I mean, Father Time is undefeated except for against LeBron James. And when you look at the Penguins organization, they have a handful of second and third pairing options that are better than Brian Dumoulin. And like I mentioned earlier with Danton Heinen, this team needs to turn a corner in certain areas and change where it can afford to change. Brian Dumoulin is an area they can afford to change. $4.1 million off the books, clean, and you need to turn younger. You mentioned Ty Smith. I think that's the perfect name to go up and get into the lineup for Brian Dumoulin. So let's move over to another player and talk Josh Archibald. Interesting case here because the Pittsburgh Penguins didn't think they needed Josh Archibald. Well, not them. They thought they needed Josh Archibald. Ron Hextall throwing a lot of swagger around, mentioning that, hey, we didn't sign I don't even remember who it was. Larson.
Yes, Johan Larson.
We didn't sign Johan Larson, but I can tell you we did sign Josh Archibald. And everybody's like, wait, you did? Like, nobody heard about this? Okay. They brought in Josh Archibald. That move was met with a lot of pushback from everybody, including us on this podcast. And I'll say, pleasantly surprised this season about Josh Archibald's performance. He was an excellent depth piece for the Pittsburgh Penguins. With that in mind, maybe you sign him, maybe you don't. What I think you do in that position, first of all, it is so far down the list of priorities this summer for the Pittsburgh Penguins that maybe you sign him and say, hey, we checked that box. We have that position filled. Let's focus on something else because it's right there. It's easy. It's not expensive. I'm sure he might get a little bit of a pay bump coming back a second season with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But if you can afford and you can find anyone better on the market, then find somebody else better on the market. But if you can't, yeah, bring Josh Archibald back. Put him on the fourth line. Stick him on fourth line right wing, and there you go.
I think the thing with Josh Archibald is, while I see everything you're saying, new management's not going to care for him. They're not. And it's not even through any fault of his own. I just don't see whoever it may be, whomever steps into the table, to the chair, to the office. They're going to understand what Josh Archibald brought to the team and go, that's great. We can find someone slightly younger, do the same thing, same price. Dime a dozen out here. I just don't see it happening. Plus, the bottom six needs such a revamp that he's just going to become, just cutting a fat. Really, it's a simple, easy transaction to take on. Nothing against Josh Archibald, nothing against you either, Brlansky here, but I just don't see it happening whatsoever. And I don't even think I really care to see it happen. So I have to go with the move on for sake of that's the most likely option. I mean, really, did Hextall want to bring him in, or was it knee-jerk reaction because Johan Larsson fell through? And that goes with Granlund. Like, did he really want to bring Granlund in, or was it knee-jerk because he fell through with JT Miller?
See, I wouldn't say that for the Archibald thing because it was the first day of free agency.
Right, so, but I mean,
if that was knee-jerk reaction, yes, we've got on Hextall at all, but I don't think he is that incompetent that he would have said, you know what? No, Johan Larsson on the opening day of free agency. I need somebody, Josh Archibald. Like, it was the first day of free agency, Horwat. Like, that's, again, nothing against you, but that's a take that I feel like I understand we don't give Hextall much credit, and he doesn't deserve much credit because of his performance over the past year, but he's not that illegitimate of a general manager that he would have thought, okay, I couldn't fill my fourth line right wing role with Johan Larsson. I must do it now because nobody's going to be available later.
Man, you never know. He's not here for a reason.
I'm going to say that I know that was not the reason. I think Josh Archibald was on his plans, especially considering I believe Johan Larsson is a center. But regardless, let's move over to Ryan Poehling, restricted free agent this summer. I say must sign, Horwat. What say you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I said it on here somewhere. I'm really curious to see what the number will be. He is a full-time NHLer. It's not like he spent time in the AHL this season, so he's deserving of an NHL number that is higher than what he's getting now, which is $750. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see what the number is. So I'm into the idea of Ryan Poehling sticking around. He's absolutely a must-sign. I just want to see what kind of deal this is. And I'm not even going to throw my own option, my own idea out just because I don't have one. I'm just so genuinely curious what it could be.
Yeah, I think Poehling's another guy like O'Connor that you're going to see a one-way contract for. Also because, he really found his game at the end of the season. Like during the regular season, there were a lot of times where you're looking at it, you're like, all right, I mean, he's a guy. He's there. He's faster than we all expected, right? Fastest clocked speed of the 2022-23 regular season. Ryan Poehling over Connor McDavid. We're going to hold that all the time.
Absolutely.
And mention that all the time. But at the end of the season, once he finally got healthy, he really found his game. And now I'm not saying that Ryan Poehling is a guy that I would bring back and say, hey, third line center, there you go. I would say he's your fourth line center. And in a pinch, if you have injuries or the guy that you bring in to be third line center just isn't cutting it, a la Mikael Granlund, in a pinch, he can work. Now, the problem with the Penguins last season was they brought in 3 third-line guys that didn't work, and they didn't have 3 guys that in a pinch could fill that role, right? They just didn't have that kind of depth, and they whiffed on all 3 third-line guys. Think about that. The third line to start last season was Danton Heinen, swing and a miss. Jeff Carter, swing and a miss. Kasperi Kapanen, swing and a miss. 3 strikes, you're out, and the third line was trash. Ryan Poehling was fine on the third line at the end of last season. That's not his best spot, and I do think that he still has room to grow because he is 24 years old, but let's not forget he was misused and utilized incorrectly with the Montreal Canadiens. So getting that fresh start was good for Ryan Poehling with the Penguins, and he saw that at the end of the season. He started to build off of what he had learned throughout the year when he finally got healthy.
Yeah, and it's something that he can continue to build into next season and maybe even the season further. It's going to be a fun ride with Ryan Poehling. He'll be the depth center for sure. But you never know what his future holds. At only 24, got a lot of hockey in him.
Yeah, we'll see what Ryan Poehling's future is. I imagine, especially as an RFA, I imagine he gets a new deal, at least from the outside looking in. Again, things change when a new general manager takes foot into the arena and puts his own little sprinkle on this team. Let's talk about Tristan Jarry, Horwat.
Mm-hmm.
Must sign, maybe sign, move on. Where do you stand on the Penguins starting netminder as of April 25th, 2023?
I'm back in the bags for him. I'm moving on. I want to see a completely new goaltending duo here. Something to really shake up this organization. Something to really shake up this team. Get the fire going again. This team missed the playoffs by a couple of points. For the third season in a row, they were let down by the goaltending. And among other things in all 3 seasons, obviously. But if you can fix one hole and fill one hole, you do it there. I don't know who your options are. I don't know what kind of better ideas that might be had. It's going to be a rough run, but I just think you can't be let down by the same 2 guys again. Not with a new group coming in. Not with new management coming in. People were calling for Tristan Jarry's head after the Islanders debacle.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Burke and Hextall both said, he's our guy. Here's a new contract to prove it. Right? Was that when he signed the deal?
No, he signed before that.
Well, they still said, he's our guy. He's sticking around to really prove it. And then what happened? Then Tristan Jarry was injured heading into the postseason. And then Casey DeSmith got hurt 4 periods in, whatever it may have been. 5 even. 5 periods in. Still not enough. Because now we're down to Louis Domingue and his magic for a couple of games. Now, don't get me wrong. Had we gotten out of that series somehow, some way with Louis Domingue, obviously you're going back to Tristan Jarry in round 2, but oh man, you can't be let down by your goaltending for another year, because that's exactly what happened this year. Tristan Jarry was injured all season. We don't know exactly with what, but he came out and said almost all year.
Yeah.
What?
Well, I mean, you remember there were the reports of, quote, physical issues in the second month of the season when the Penguins were on that first 7-game losing streak, and he just was never right until after that. We've heard chronic hip issue. We've heard from Mike Sullivan, hey, he's not injury related anymore. We're just trying to get him up to speed. And then at the end of the season, Jarry said, yeah, I'm still dealing with some stuff. So yeah, he was injured throughout the rest of the season. And I will guarantee you one thing. And listen, there are very little guarantees when it comes to this Pittsburgh Penguins offseason. Crosby, Malkin, Letang are safe. That's a guarantee. The Pittsburgh Penguins will not have the same duo of goaltenders starting next season as they have had for the past 3 seasons. I guarantee that, because it was baffling that Burke and Hextall ran it back after last year. So whoever the new front office is, general manager, president of hockey ops, whoever those new guys are, I guarantee you, whether it's Tristan Jarry going out and then bringing in a new starter, or if they're saying, you know what, we'll bring Tristan Jarry back, probably not give him as good of a contract as he had hoped going into the season, and we'll toss to Smith, find a 1B. Regardless, I think there is going to be some movement in the goaltending ranks. Yeah. There's going to be a new face there, and it's not going to be a Dustin Tokarski, right?
Nope.
So this is going to be the toughest call all summer. This is going to be the biggest storyline all summer after the Penguins hire a general manager. And the biggest thing, like you mentioned, what is available as far as upgrades? The John Gibson thing has been tossed around. I talked about that on Penguins to Go yesterday. I like Jeremy Swayman, but he's an RFA, and the Bruins are likely going to match any offer that is sent Swayman's way. Free agent-wise, there's a handful of guys. Do you trust a Freddie Anderson? Do you want to bring in an Aiden Hill? There's a handful of guys. Nobody that's really that standout number one guy. So maybe it's 2 signings there, a 1A and a 1B from the free agent market. I don't know. There's plenty of different directions the Penguins can go. But at the end of the day, I do believe Tristan Jarry is better than what he showed this season. He was injured all season long. Now, if everybody wants to say, hey, he's injury prone, that's why I don't want to bring him back, I don't have time for that. Shut up. He had one bad season where he was injured. We've seen multiple times where, hey, a guy missed a lot of time this season. Doesn't mean he's injury prone, right? Last year, what was it? Brock Nelson busted into him and broke his foot. It's not injury prone. His foot broke. And there's people that want to say, oh, he has weak bones. Shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about. This year, yeah, chronic hip injury, that's a concern. You're going to have to monitor that over the offseason, and you're going to have to be wary of that. But at the same time, Evgeny Malkin played 41 games last year. Everybody said, you know what? I don't know if he can play. He's never played 70 games in a long time. It's been a couple of years. Played 82 games, was over a point per game. Shut up with the injury stuff. Like, literally, enough of that. Is he a good enough goaltender to be a number one in this league? That is a better question. I don't know if he is, right? I don't know if he has the mental fortitude when the game gets bigger and the lights get brighter that he's going to be able to be the guy. I don't know if he has the swagger. I certainly don't think he has the swagger, but I don't know if he has the confidence in himself to be able to do that. That's my question, not all this health bull crap that people are mentioning. So I say maybe you sign him. He's not good enough to be a must sign. You have to weigh your options and see what's out there because there might be a better option out there, right? You have to weigh your options. He's not a go-to. You got to bring this guy back. He's not. He's just not that guy. But he's not a cut dry and move on because the options out there, if there were that many great options out there, I'd be right there with you, Horwat. I would. But at the same time, there's not any, hey, John Gibson is still that dude, right? He's not. He's not that dude. And here's the other thing about John Gibson. He's played 18 more games than Tristan Jarry over the past 4 seasons. One's considered a workhorse, one's considered injury prone. Get your mind out of what we just saw and look back a little bit further. That's my whole point with Tristan Jarry. I say maybe you sign him, you say move on. I think the one thing we can all agree on is he is not the only answer for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they need to look at other options.
Correct. He's not going to be the only option to be, taken hold of. He's not the only thing that needs to be fixed with this team. Jesus, looking at John Gibson's numbers are so scary because we know he's better than that. That's the thing with John Gibson, and I'm sure we're going to have this discussion 8,000 times this offseason.
At least.
Until another name floats around. The thing with John Gibson is that team is so bad in front of him. And, legitimately, the Anaheim Ducks gave up the most shots ever by an NHL team. Yeah. John Gibson saw a lot of rubber. He did what he could in 53 games played this past season. League lead in losses for 3 of the last 4 seasons. The team in front of him has not been good. I want to see what John Gibson can do on a good team. Why not give him the run here? Give him the chance. Because that seems to be an A+, not an A+. That seems to be an option right now.
It is. But my biggest thing, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You covered all the bases of on your diatribe of, I don't want to hear it either. We just need to move on because, like I said, new management coming in too. They're going to want to build their team. There are guaranteed, there are not many guarantees when the new management comes in. There are a few that I can say for certain will happen when FSG signs their guy. They're going to be a fan of Mike Sullivan. That's going to be step number 1.
Yeah, they're going to have to be. That's probably the first question in all of the interviews that haven't happened yet is, hey, what do you think of Mike Sullivan? Okay, you're gone. Get out.
Exactly. They're going to want to keep Sidney Crosby around. They're going to want to keep Evgeny Malkin around. They're going to want to keep Chris Letang around. Those are the 4 guarantees. From there, maybe the questions turn into, okay, Jake Gensel signing now or next year. Okay, Jason Zucker is a big free agent. What are we doing here? What path do you want this team to go in? Eventually, you get to the goaltending question, and genuinely, that the new GM has to be, we're going to take a hard look at it. And by hard look, more often than not, that's going to mean we're going to put our goalie in there. We're not doing this. We've seen what happened. We know Tristan Jarry is an all-star caliber goalie. We've seen it. I don't care what Brlansky, no offense. I don't care what you think about the injury thing. If he's hurt, that's not good.
Oh, yeah,
we've seen it from this team for long enough.
There's a reason people have to pass physicals to get contracts in sports.
Exactly. But why even bother with it?
Because the options are not all that great. Like even John Gibson. To me, John Gibson is Tristan Jarry, but he's performed in the playoffs before. That's what he is. I know that he had a worse defense in front of him. Get him a better defense, which the Pittsburgh Penguins weren't great at defense this year. Like they weren't fantastic in front of their goaltenders this year. His numbers are probably commensurate to the same thing that Tristan Jarry did over the past 4 seasons. Now, with that, you're also paying to acquire him, whatever it costs, which is not going to be cheap, and you're paying him $6.4 million for the next 4 seasons. That's my issue with John Gibson. Is it that much of an upgrade over a guy that you can probably get for cheaper and not have to give up assets for?
Don't know. I'd do it.
There you go. I mean, that's the thing. That's going to be the argument among, I'm sure, the people in our comment section on YouTube. Check us out at Inside the Penguins. It's going to be obviously all over Twitter, all over Facebook, all over whatever social media you use, TikTok, Twitch, whatever. It's the big conversation surrounding the Pittsburgh Penguins this year. So that's always going to be a conversation until, like we said, you get an answer. But let's talk about Jason Zucker really quickly, because we went 11 minutes on Tristan Jarry, but that's just what's going to happen. Jason Zucker must sign, maybe sign, or move on. Obviously, before you give your answer, Seth Rorapaw had a piece on Jason Zucker yesterday where Zucker told him, quote, "I want to be back, but as of now, it's obviously out of my control. We'll figure it out." End quote. Zucker says he wants to be back. Would you bring him back if you were the next general manager of the Penguins?
Well, first of all, they all said they want to be back.
But he's now doubled down twice. He's probably been one of the only guys that have been asked twice, but he's doubled down twice.
Exactly. I mean, this is such a hard one, right? It's the only true maybe, I would say, in this entire list for me. It is the only true that either way, this team can benefit from it. You bring him back, okay. He has to do that again. He has to remain healthy. And that confidence still needs to be there as a veteran and in his veteran leadership role, despite the fact we have plenty of that. And if you move on from him, well, that's $5 million saved. And that's an opportunity to find younger legs. That's an opportunity to find someone who you know for certain, or at least a little more for certain, because it's hockey and it's a rough sport, can stay a little healthier. And there are benefits to both sides of it. He's already on the wrong side of 30. You don't know. He's looking for his last big deal in the NHL too. There's no doubt about that, right?
Oh yeah,
he's not going to
he has the chance to cash in this year.
Exactly. And you can never fault a player for taking the money. Never at all. Cups aren't guaranteed. Playoffs aren't guaranteed, as we say. All-star games aren't even guaranteed. But that money is. That cash baby is. And if someone's willing to back up the Brinks truck, by all means. By all means. Mm-hmm. I just don't know how willing the Penguins will be to doing that. And like I said, new management.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jason Zucker will be high on the priority list. But it'll be high on the priority list of just making a decision. It's not going to be, all right, he's on the list because we need to sign him. It's going to be, we just need to make the decision now so we know how to build further. Mm-hmm. Because that's a huge top 6 spot, like I said, worth $5.5 million to work with. So I see both sides of the coin. I am truly in the maybe category of genuinely, it's up to the management. Don't let me have an opinion. Would I like to see him back? Yes, but I would also be a little iffy on it. Would I like to see him leave? No, but I'd also be a little iffy on it.
Yeah.
I'm totally in the middle.
Yeah, with Jason Zucker, I know we've mentioned it and everybody mentions it. You want to get younger and faster. And I know Jason Zucker doesn't really go towards the younger goal and bringing him back, but he's proved, especially last season, that he still has some pretty good foot speed, and he still brings the intensity that the Pittsburgh Penguins need from a guy in that position, a guy playing alongside Evgeny Malkin. He does the dirty work for Evgeny Malkin's line. Now, Malkin is perfectly capable of doing that himself, but Malkin's a tree. Like, you want him in open space more than you want him getting down there against the boards where people are kicking at his legs, because he falls, and when he falls hard. Jason Zucker is that nasty, grimy winger that goes into those areas, lays the body, gets the puck, comes out of those areas, and he can lay a beautiful pass over to Evgeny Malkin, or as he showed this year, he can finish. He had 27 goals this year. And as you've mentioned, if he wants, he could get a raise from that 5.5.
Yeah.
Probably not going to be from the Penguins if that's the case, because they're already paying 4 guys a lot of money in that top 6 or 5. I'm trying to think. Rust, Gensel, Crosby, Malkin, Raquel. 5 guys. Great burgers. Great Penguins top 6. They're paying 5 guys in that top 6 already. Adding Jason Zucker into that, I know that last season they had 6 guys making a lot of money, but we saw how that worked out for the bottom 6. And with the Pittsburgh Penguins needing to rebuild that bottom 6, needing to divert more money towards the goaltending, it's going to be hard to re-sign Jason Zucker. If you can, and the price is right, you sign him. But if the price isn't right, you're going to have to let him walk. And he says he wants to come back to the Penguins. We'll see how much he wants to come back to the Penguins when the negotiations start actually happening and when we start to see some reports about what either side is looking for.
Yeah, and like I said, a huge factor in all this is whatever management comes in and whatever they want to do, whatever their goal is for the team.
Mm-hmm.
If it is, you know what, we're here and we have this plan in place that involves stripping it down almost completely this summer, get used to it. That's their choice. There might be a lot of heads rolling. I mean, sure, Brian Rust has the full no move, but he's a guy that's sticking around. Rickard Rakell's is modified. I'm saying some scary things, I know, but this new management group wants to come in and legitimately strip it down, make the options open. Whoever it is going to know how to build a hockey team. First of all, Fenway's not going to go cheap on their GM. They're not going to just pick someone out of the bin and go, let's see what he can do. They're going to go in depth on this, on whoever it may be. It also might be a first-time GM who wants to build a team like it's a video game. You don't know what's going to happen here. This is genuinely about to turn into, for the second year in a row, the most interesting summer the Pittsburgh Penguins have ever had. Right?
Yeah, in different ways, but also, yeah,
exactly.
Same intensity, same intrigue this summer.
We thought last season was going to be, or last offseason was going to be such a train wreck. It could go one way or the other. There was, okay, Malkin and Letang are up. Here's contract ideas. Here's the doomsday button. What are the options following then? What maybe if we get them, what are the other options? Maybe it's just one, this option. Mm-hmm. There were so many different paths that the Penguins could have taken last season, and we saw the one they took, and it didn't work out completely.
No.
Now there's another. It's a new person on the path, but with the same group behind them. Time to pick your own destiny.
Yeah, Hextall and Burke certainly held on to their cards last offseason, which took a little bit of the mystique away. A lot of it was they brought back Raquel, they brought back Rust, they brought back Malkin, they brought back Letang. They didn't change their goaltenders. Who else did they bring back? I can't even remember. They brought back Sperry Kapanen. They brought back Danton Heinen. Right? Casey DeSmith was re-signed to a team.
You could throw Chad Ruedel in that boat if you wanted to. Mark Friedman in that boat.
P.O. Joseph was thrown in that boat. It was a lot of holding the cards. So this offseason, similar to last offseason, while it might not be the headline names, it might not be Malkin, Letang, Rust, Raquel. It's not the headline names that you might have to see whether or not they hold the cards or get rid of them. It's a lot of these depth pieces. And the big one, as we talked about for 10 minutes on this episode, goaltending. And when there's a question about goaltending, everything else gets heightened. What do you do to build around the guy in the big fluffy pads? That's what's going to be intriguing about this offseason. And I think it's going to be an interesting one nonetheless. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we finally did it after about a couple of weeks, a weekly Pens poll. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. We have our weekly Pens poll where we asked which former Penguin would you most want to see return to the team next season? I'll preface this with something I probably should have put in the tweet. All of these names are upcoming unrestricted free agents. Hence, you wouldn't have to trade for any of them. You would just have to sign them. Evan Rodriguez won the poll with 54% of the vote. Patrick Hornqvist came in second with 21%. Phil Kessel, 19%. And Ian Cole getting a lowly 6% of the vote on the Weekly Pens poll. Horwat, which Penguin would you prefer to see, if any of these, back in a Penguins uniform next season?
I gotta go with none. I really do. And I don't even mean to like.
You're not alone on that. A lot of people
Yeah.
said, why are we going back to the well here? Like, I understand that Evan Rodriguez has been pretty good for the Colorado Avalanche. I understand that Hornqvist was instrumental. So was Kessel. So was Cole in Stanley Cups in 2016 and 17. But a lot of people said, let's just move on from all four of those and not reopen those doors.
Yeah, this is the kind of poll that is just to catch the eyes. Like, oh, familiar names that harken the memories, i.e. Nick Bonino from, the trade deadline. It's a completely different situation now because not only are all of these men 7 years older, they're all 7 years older. They're all on the back ends of their careers. Patrick Hornqvist will probably play again in the NHL, but he probably also shouldn't, right? Just for the sake of head injuries. He was not canned, but he was taken out of the lineup for the remainder of the season because he had his second concussion in the season. When he was with the Penguins, his concussion number was already high. So that's enough of that. He probably shouldn't play another game in the NHL. Ian Cole is just kind of older and don't really know what he brings to the table anymore. And Phil Kessel, I mean, yeah, he played all 82 again. I was wrong whenever I said I think they healthy scratched him. He played all 82 again, but you didn't notice him. I didn't know he played all 82. And he definitely doesn't put up the same kind of numbers that he used to. And that's expected whenever you're 35. He was in more of a role, in more of like a lower role with the Golden Knights than he was before. Only 14 goals this year. I just don't see that happening either now. Unfortunate, but yeah, no, I'm past that point of nostalgia. And as for Evan Rodriguez, man, I don't know. I guess if I had to pick one, it would have to be him, but it wouldn't be for long and it wouldn't be for a lot of money. I'm sorry. Just don't. Yeah. You'd never know what you're getting with Evan Rodriguez, and that kind of still continues in Colorado. I know he really put up a decent season, but that was through necessity. He was once again a first-line center at one point. So it's just not my cup of tea. Never has been either, if anyone's been listening long enough.
Yeah, you've never really been the biggest fan of Evan Rodriguez. Even last year during his breakout season, you were like, yeah, well, he was great in the first half. He was not great in the second half. What's real? Probably the second half. That was always your take on Evan Rodriguez, and I'll get to Rodriguez in a second. The other thing about the other three, Hornqvist, Kessel, Cole, none of them really left on great terms from Pittsburgh. Too. Hornqvist was traded, not happy about it. Kessel wanted out and was traded. Ian Cole was traded and then wouldn't play for the team the Penguins traded him to.
The team that they traded him to wouldn't take him, but still, it was a bad, unideal situation for Ian Cole. But yes,
that was the Derek Brassard trade, correct? Yeah. Like I'm correct in thinking that. Like I didn't miss that. Yeah, I thought that I always there's weird trades with the Senators that always get mixed in my head. But yes. Those three guys didn't really leave amicably from the Pittsburgh Penguins, and those three are the older three of the players. And while Ian Cole of the three is the guy I'd probably take, the Penguins already kind of have that guy in Jan Ruda, so you don't really need to replace him with Ian Cole. I did love Ian Cole when he played for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was one of the most physical defensemen they had. He was the best defensive defenseman that they had. Him, along with Brian Dumoulin, was a 1-2 punch defensively that the Pittsburgh Penguins would love to have going into next season, but it's not 2016. So I'm staying away from that as well. Evan Rodriguez, I would take Evan Rodriguez back on the Pittsburgh Penguins at a fair price in a heartbeat. At the $2 million he's making now, yes. Even at a multi-year deal, if it's a 2-year, $2 million deal, which he probably might take, I don't know. He had a similar season this year than he had the last season. If he would have stayed healthy all year, he would have had an identical season. Let's not forget, last year was his breakout. He had 16 goals, 39 points, and 69 games played for the Colorado Avalanche this year. He has multiple beautiful assists so far in the playoffs, and one of the surprisingly best series in the Stanley Cup playoffs this far between the Avs and the Seattle Kraken. And while, yes, you said it was out of necessity, he had to be a first-line center once again. Penguins could have used a guy like that. Maybe not at center. Could have used a guy like that at wing.
Absolutely.
So I would take Evan Rodriguez back in a heartbeat. He's 29 years old. He has the foot speed. He plays all three facets of the game. Good penalty killer. Good on the power play as a second power play guy. And he's good at 5-on-5. He's not as physical, but nobody on the Penguins is, and I don't foresee that changing anytime soon under Mike Sullivan. So I'd take Evan Rodriguez back in the heartbeat. The other three, again, nostalgia is a hell of a drug, but I'd pass on them.
Yep. I'd pass on all four, but that's just me. I think it's time to really completely rework this, but
I'd like to see that too, but the Penguins could do a lot worse than Evan Rodriguez coming back as a third-line center.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like I said with Nylander earlier, you're right. Anyone in the bottom six would have been a benefit, would have been a bonus. It would have been a step forward. So that's why Nylander kind of got in and was eventually pushed up to the top six and then pushed right back down. Evan Rodriguez in this bottom six, where, yes, the back half of last season wasn't great. I would have taken this Evan Rodriguez over anybody we had in the bottom six right now.
Yeah. Even if, and I know hindsight is 2020. If you just say screw off to Kasperi Kapanen and Danton Heinen, sign Evan Rodriguez, you have Rodriguez, who was better than both of those guys, and you have $2.2 extra million in cap space, where you could have probably signed somebody else who's pretty decent. Oh, well. Oh, well. That's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. We will be back later this week with a new episode. Keep an eye on the feed as we will start to do end-of-season player reviews coming up starting next week. We'll discuss that and more as the summer continues for the Pittsburgh Penguins, a wild one as the general manager search is continuing. But that's it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.